question is that the amendment now be agreed to, and I give the call to the honourable member for Forrest.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. Mr Deputy Speaker, primary industries, as you know, have always been an essential part of the Australian economy. From our early history of Australia riding on the sheep's back, our primary industries have innovated, changed and grown exponentially. A critical part of this growth has been the investment in research and development, as well as extensive marketing. As a farmer myself, I know that it is one thing to produce a product, it is entirely another to find profitable long-term markets for those products, which is why trade and our free trade agreements have been and will continue to be so important to the primary production sector. And when we look back to what's been asked of us as a government repeatedly, it's been the number one issue that farmers have requested, the market access issue. Now, some of the challenges for those of us who are farmers and primary producers is to continue to extend Australia's competitive edge in the global food and fibre market, to tackle challenges such as competition in both domestic and export markets, the employment in our towns that go with our primary production, the long-term impacts of the change of climate on ag productivity and sustainability. Mr Deputy Speaker, the Australian Bureau of Ag and Resource Economics forecast our farm exports at $48.7 billion in 2017-18. It's a massive earner for our country, and as you know very well, Mr Deputy Speaker, how well it underpins so many regional communities, the small businesses and the local economies right around Australia. Since 1945, when the government established ABARES, we've seen increased productivity, constant increases, constant innovation, and some amazing farmers, some of the best in the world, without a question, and mostly because of continuous research and development. And there are industry-specific development corporations, as we know. From the Australian Egg Corporation, the Meat and Livestock Australia, Horticulture Innovation Australia, and the very well-known Australian Wool Innovation, and many others. These R&D corporations also have a marketing function. And the R&D isn't just into more efficient ways to produce the respective commodities, but also in the marketing of the products. Relevant industries invest in their R&D corporations through the levies on the production itself. And the Australian government invests by matching the industry R&D levy expenditure. It is a real partnership and a unique model in Australia and the world. Mr Deputy Speaker, according to ABARES estimates, for every dollar invested in agricultural R&D, our farmers, our primary producers, actually generate a $12 return within 10 years for every single dollar. It's a great return on investment. Strong agriculture, fisheries and forestry industries are a massive benefit for all Australians and underpin so many of our rural economies, as I said. The local jobs, the small businesses, and as I mentioned earlier, there's 15 rural R&D corporations. Out of those 15, 14 can carry out marketing activities, but only 10 do, and they provide a very valuable service to their industry sectors in both the R&D and the marketing. This has helped to build our pork, wool and red meat industries, for example, and expanded Australian access to international markets, particularly relevant with the free trade agreements, as I said, delivered by this government. Japan, Korea, China, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, Peru, Singapore. The coalition government has worked hard to open the international markets and access for our primary producers. And as I said, it was the most common thing said to me and to you, Mr Deputy Speaker, market access. We just want a fair go into the market, and that's what this government has worked overtime to deliver. And I've said previously, and I'll say it proudly every single time, our primary producers in Australia are some of the most efficient in the world, in spite of operating often in much harsher and more extreme weather and growing conditions than many of our international competitors. But much of that capability and capacity to manage environmental challenges comes from continuous research and development. For instance, Dairy Australia is an R&D corporation that defines its role as to build a sustainable and internationally competitive industry and provide solutions that help farmers adapt to ever-changing operating environment. That's the world we live in. It doesn't stand still for us on the farm, Mr Deputy Speaker. And of course it acts as the collective investment arm of the dairy industry, invests in research, development and extension, as well as industry services. In my electorate of Forest, Western Dairy assists farmers with many programs made possible from R&D contributions. Western Dairy helps farmers with programs in relation to compost, financial analysis, farm safety, and one called Stepping Back, which actually assists farmers in transitioning and setting up for the next generation of farmers, which is really critical in this space. Australia's rural and ag sector employs nearly more than 1.5 million people. The overall ag supply chain contributes 12% to Australia's GDP. And I really like this statistic, Mr Deputy Speaker. Each year, the average Australian farmer feeds 600 people. What a great achievement. We feed 600 people, each person. And I think that's often overlooked. Innovation and agility and efficiency are critical to our industry. Strategic, targeted and regionally relevant research and development is the key to that, as is the collaboration, the extension onto farm between researchers, investors, governments, primary producers and agribusinesses. That direct return beyond the farm gate itself. I know in 2015 Deloitte said agribusiness is the sector with the strongest competitive advantage for Australia's outlook, as well as the benefits of R&D flowing directly to farmers and regional, state and federal budgets. That's what it does. It doesn't just sit with the farmer, it flows right across the board. It flows down to help provide innovative, cutting-edge education for our agricultural students, which is one of the reasons I cannot understand the WA State Labor Government that announced $64 million in education cuts, some of which they've had to reverse because of public pressure. The CWA actually marched on state parliament recently and they protested against those sweeping cuts to regional education. But the one that really, I believe, is so retrograde and negative, the most blatant and ill-conceived cash grabs, is taking 20% of funds from the Agricultural Education Provisions Trust Fund. Now, this is actually physically taking funding from our agricultural colleges and Esperance Farm Training School in WA. These funds are actually earned by the schools themselves and generated from selling their own produce. Now, the Harvey Ag School in my electorate is a fantastic facility, but they're going to lose at least $50,000 every year. Now, these are the funds that the ag schools use for farm machinery, for developing their farms and applying the latest innovation and technology, and to repair and replace fences and the constant recurrent costs they have to meet. So the Labor's cutting hundreds of thousands of dollars from these regional ag schools. Now, I have no doubt, and I'm sure there are members in here, that agriculture is critical to the WA and Australian economy. And in WA it's worth $8.6 billion alone, just to the WA economy. And the expectation is that that could double over the next 12 years. As our beef, our lamb, our wine, our beer, our dairy, our fruits and vegetables, seafood, pork, wheat and grains are marketed overseas in high-end products. That's where we belong, in that end, at the high-value end of niche products, because we have fantastic quality and we should never underestimate that and its impact around the world. Our farmers and our primary producers work very closely together to get these products to the markets. And our future farmers, they need the best possible education with the most current innovation and training technologies, the machinery, the tools and trades equipment, like that at the Harvey Ag School's Trade Training Centre. It is exceptional. The students currently have access to well-equipped workshops. They're training on the machinery and tools currently being used in the relevant industry, whether it's automotive, construction, furnishing, metals and engineering. But it's also, as you would know, Mr Deputy Speaker, the Ag School is an economic contributor in itself to our local Harvey community, in employment, in sourcing output from inputs from local businesses. Over 600 students attend these colleges. What this tells me, Mr Deputy Speaker, is unfortunately the WA State Labor Government just doesn't understand the constant changes that occur in the ag sector. They don't understand why our ag students need access to cutting edge farm machinery, technology and equipment, and that's delivered by continuous research and development, but access to the funding to keep upgrading what they have at their disposal to teach great young people. But mostly what is worrying is that they don't want to invest in the future of agriculture for the next generation. What sort of a message does this give to the great young people who want to go into agriculture and see a great future? And this is in a state that is set to double its population by 2050. So as farmers, constant innovation, constant focus on quality is what we do. It's what helps to keep us competitive, and we are constantly improving our efficiency and productivity. And we know that around 58 is the average age of farmers in Australia. That's why these young people at the ag colleges in Western Australia are so important. We actually need every single one of our new young farmers. So I actually say to the State Labor Government, cutting funding from WA's agricultural colleges is a short-sighted, city-centric decision. Continuous R&D and marketing are the keys to being competitive. This legislation deals with the 4 statutory R&D corporations that are still governed by the 1989 legislation, the Fisheries, Cottons, Grains and Rural Industries R&D Corps. Unlike most of the R&Ds, they must have a statutory levy attached in order to undertake marketing. This change was made in 2013 following wide consultation, which led to the passage of the Rural Research and Development Legislation Amendment Act of 2013. Now, the process to impose a statutory levy is often time-consuming and its collection can be expensive. The Fisheries R&D Corp and its industries bodies say that the smaller industries can't afford the cost of establishing and collecting a levy. So this bill will make it possible for the fisheries, cotton, grains and rural industries R&D corporations to carry out marketing activities by using voluntary contributions, for example, a gift, a grant or a bequest. So it simply updates the legislation and puts these 4 corporations on the same footing as the other corporations. The bill also requires the R&D corporations to report on the marketing activities that they carry out each financial year in its annual report. So this ensures the transparency for the industry, and the bill expands the definition of marketing activities to include matters that are incidental to marketing. This allows the R&D corporations to plan and to coordinate marketing activities, and that will allow, besides using the funds provided to them for R&D purposes. So, Mr Deputy Speaker, in finishing my remarks today, can I just give a great shout out to every farmer, every primary producer that's out there in Australia. I have enormous respect for my fellow farmers. I'm very proud of them. On Saturday evening, I attended a Dairy Industry Association of Australia event where the award-winning, the DIAA award-winning products were celebrated. And there were some fantastic products from right around Australia, but from right around Western Australia. But what I did do, Mr Deputy Speaker, which will be of no surprise to you, I did remind those great manufacturers, small, medium, large manufacturers in WA, that we are interdependent. Me as a producer and my family as producers of some of the best quality milk in Australia, and they as manufacturers are interdependent, and we work together to basically produce some of the best quality dairy products to the market, and I'm hoping that they, in turn, as I said to them, take advantage of the fantastic free trade agreements that we've done, and look at how not only to get their products well established in the domestic market, but actually get them into the wider international markets as well. We can compete anywhere in the world with our great farmers and our fantastic manufacturers, and I just urge them to get on with it, Mr Deputy Speaker.
I thank the Chief Government Whip for her contribution.